as well as Maria, Planning Board Clerk, Michael Boggs, Nathan Van Wy, Town Attorney, Mo, and Linda Little. As well as in person, we have Rich Goldman and Rodney Bent and myself.
Good
So,
evening to all.
what's that?
Good evening to all.
Evening to all. Excellent. Hold on a sec. All right, excellent. So
Right, that's what I meant.
we are just waiting a moment to try and get all the Zoom participants. Can you mute it? So we're just waiting a moment to try to get the Zoom participants visible on the screen. However, we're going to do a review of the agenda.
That's right. Okay.
So everyone had a chance to see the agenda tonight. Yeah,
Certainly have.
we may have audio visual. Okay, we're gonna wait for a second.
Hey, Pete,
Yeah,
Michael Boggs here.
yeah. Hi, Michael.
Since you guys are in the town hall, are you guys going to use the
Oh my,
AV program we have there?
Michael, we are trying our darndest.
Is Maria working on it?
She's working hard at it. Yes.
Okay.
That's what we've been waiting for.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. And that's the momentary static that you hear. All right, has everyone had a chance to review the agenda?
Yes,
All right, could I get a motion to accept the agenda?
yes,
Can I get a second?
Second,
All in favor of approving tonight's agenda?
aye,
I,
aye,
Excellent. We do not have minutes to review from the last meetings, and they will be forthcoming. And the main portion of our meeting tonight is a discussion about whether or not to add recreation, and I'm going to read the line, to the zoning for the agricultural district, to the list of permitted uses. So essentially, the town supervisor has requested that the town of Ulysses Planning Board comment on a proposal to add recreation, outdoor, to the list of permitted uses in the AR, the agricultural/rural zone. A potential definition of recreation and outdoor is as follows. Recreation, outdoor, land or facilities providing daily or regular scheduled recreation-oriented activities in an outdoor setting. And actually, before we get to this discussion, I just want to ask, I want to give privilege of the floor. Are there any members of the public here who would like to make a comment? Not on this discussion, but on any other topics?
I'd like to ask a question before you go into privilege of the floor.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask the question as to whether or not the group could, one, under your direction and control, include members of the public in our discussion, and or have a privilege of the floor after we have had our discussion.
I think that's a great idea to include members of the public in a privilege of the floor after the discussion.
If I would move that as a motion, if that's appropriate.
Could I get a second?
Second.
All in favor of a privilege of the floor following the discussion?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you for the suggestion, John.
Okay.
Any members of the public want to speak for privilege of the floor on really any matters?
Pete, can I just ask a question regarding? Basically,
Sure.
I'm involved as representing a group called Trumansburg Community Recreation.
Yeah.
And it may be that we were the impetus for Caitlin's ask tonight for you to take a look at maybe changing some of the zoning. Is this a good time for me just to quickly introduce sort of what we're up to?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, John.
Okay, so this group that I belong to is a not-for-profit group, and our umbrella goal is to develop more recreational spaces for our community, as well as programming for our community. And over the years, we've taken a lot of input from the public, looking at asking, basically, what is it that the public's interested in? And we've heard swimming pool, indoor swimming pool, we've heard skate parks, we've heard a number of different types of recreational facilities. And what we've sort of decided to do is kind of pick the fruit that's most easiest to produce results. And what we're currently working to do is to develop some sports playing fields for especially the younger kids who sort of the outside of school programs, the travel teams and such. Taganic Soccer Club, there's a baseball organization and also a football organization that are not affiliated with the school and are currently using school grounds and any other grounds that they can. And it seems that the facilities are in high demand, and so we're looking for additional field space. And we've looked for a number of years. We comb the real estate pages, and we find that much of the land that surrounds the village is zoned as agricultural land. And in terms of playing fields, what we're looking at developing potentially would be soccer fields, baseball fields, and football fields. So those are sort of the big three that we're looking at. And one of the problems, of course, is which comes first, the chicken or the egg. If we find a piece of land that's zoned agricultural, before we can put an offer in, before we even go out and try to fundraise so that we can put an offer in, it's helpful for us to know whether or not our use that we'd like to use the property for would be a permitted use. And currently, at least when I'm looking at the agriculturally zoned land, there really isn't anything specifically written regarding sports playing fields in particular. And to complicate matters further, some of those other items that I mentioned, and the skate park, for example, potentially walking trails, picnic area, playground, those types of things, those are all elements that could potentially be added to our, to our dream, if you will. But at least starting out simple, I think we're actually currently looking at a parcel of land that's, I don't know if y'all remember where Brownie used to have their corn stand, their sweet corn stand, near the old county home. There's a parcel of land that's for sale there. It's currently a field. It would be an ideal, I think, site for us to develop the soccer field portion of what we're looking at. So that's sort of, I think, maybe how our president, whose name is Todd Edmonds, I think had a chat with Caitlin, and maybe that's what the impetus for Caitlin to propose this idea was. So that's the background, I think, at least as I understand it.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. All right. We're just doing one audiovisual thing here. Bear with us. You know how to do that?
Sorry, I didn't bring my reading glasses.
Oh, just how to allow screen share. Okay. All right. Excellent. All right. You should be good. Did that make a change for you?
No.
No. Okay. All right. Actually, do any other members of the public want to comment? Privilege of the floor remains open. Want to comment on the proposal? So I see your screen now, Maria. Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Hold on one second. Yes, sir.
I think this is a general conversation, and the specifics of it are an outcome of the general conversation, but it's nice to have the background. But I wouldn't, I haven't been in a proposal. I didn't even before planning board.
Whoever's talking is almost impossible to understand them at this end.
Commenting.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
tell them what I said.
It's Rich. Rich, do you want to just repeat that?
I'm just saying, this is a general conversation that the town board requested the planning board to have about the issue of the fact that there's no recreational facilities in the zoning. Not anything about a specific proposal.
Sure. That's what I mean. Not commenting on the specific proposal that John Wordis had mentioned, but commenting on the general discussion. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. That's what, do any members of the public have anything that they want to say in regard to that? Okay, then we're closing the first privilege of the floor.
Oh, wait,
And who is this?
Linda, can
Okay,
I?
hello.
I just wanted to make a comment, and I don't know if it might be better after the discussion or not, but I think it's a great idea to have something more, having the ability to use ag land for more recreational facilities, having, grown up with children where it's been a constant quest trying to find, places to run sports and those programs. So I know what a challenge it is. The only concern I have is the way it was stated in the agenda, and I know that's not complete, is it seems very broad. And I think the concerns that I certainly would have would be about parking and lights, eventually lighting, because there's always a desire to extend the time that the fields are available. And then noise too, like turning it into a, I don't know, some kind of motorized field or something like that. If there were some kind of constraints to be put around it, that would be ideal. So that's all I have for now. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
So I have a comment as well.
Yeah, Michael.
So one of the probably only people here that served on the zoning update steering committee, this is a bigger deal than just adding this, because other than Mr. Wordis, the senior, nobody else in this meeting was involved in that. And as Linda eloquently stated, there's a lot more to just adding recreation to a zone. So John Wordis, the junior, thank you for that. This is a specific request for a specific piece of property. And to me, this seems like a sleight of hand to try to slide it into all of the ag zone, where whether this is appropriate or not, it may not be appropriate for all of the ag zone. And with the planning board, not, a couple of members are absent tonight. They have trouble understanding and interpreting the zoning. I'm not sure that it's appropriate for this current team really to voice much on this. Because again, as Linda stated, there's a lot more that's, it's not, oh, it's for the children, there's playing fields. There's way more, it's deeper than that. So I would rather see this be a specific request from the group and Mr. Wordis, the junior. I'm not sure that the TRC is, last I looked, you guys hadn't filed a 990 in many years. So I'm not sure you guys are still up to speed as a.
Well, Michael,
Really?
I want to stop you there, because this meeting is not about about the TRC's specific plans. This is
Well, it is.
about a
'Cause
change.
that's what brought this up. And that's why, as privilege of the floor, this was started as a specific request roundabout. So the TRC should bring this to the planning board, not the supervisor.
Michael, tonight we have been asked, and I'm not going to go back and forth, but we have been asked
By the supervisor.
to provide, by the supervisor, to provide our input on this change of language. We have not been asked to consider John's proposal that would, come through its own channels. But we have been asked to do this, and that's why we're here tonight.
And
Mr. Chairman, if I can interject, I think one of the things that is important to recognize, right, is that by,
Wait, who's speaking? Please say your name.
Yeah,
This is,
oh, I apologize. This is Nathan Van Wy, attorney for the town. One of the things that's important to recognize, of course, and I think this is partially recognizing what Mr. Boggs might be implying or saying, is that a change to the zoning code affects, of course, more than just one particular parcel. It affects the entire district. And so it's very important for the town board, when adopting an amendment to the zoning code, to receive as much input as they can on the potential effects that it would have to the entire district. Because it is not just about one specific project or one specific parcel. And one of the things that, I mean, I'll be honest, I've had some input on a potential adding of a definition. One of the things that I think could have been more clearly communicated is that I would even say or recommend that this not be included as just a flat out permitted use in the zone, but that it be listed as a specially permitted use in the zone, which would mean that it goes through site plan approval and the special permit process, which would naturally safeguard many of the concerns, I think, that many folks would have about the potential recreational facilities that could be included in an area. I think there's also some room to consider narrowing the definition. It was commented, I think, earlier that this is a fairly broad definition, and that's how I like to start. We start broad, hear the concerns, and then we narrow it down. And once we've narrowed it down where there's some consensus on what that should allow, then I think we've got a really good, strong law in place. So I think by hearing these concerns, narrowing the definition down, recognizing that site plan special permit approval might be the recommendation from the planning board to the town, right? Let the planning board say, we think this should be a special permit. That's the type of feedback I think that the town board wants to hear. They may or may not agree with you, but that's the type of thing that they really want to gather from the planning board in this process.
thank you very much, Nathan. Appreciate that. So with that, we're closing the initial privilege of the floor and opening up the discussion to the board members, and then it'll be followed by additional privileges after, if people have additional comments.
this is Rodney. Can I understand, Nate, why exactly were recreational uses prohibited? Was it just an absence of not putting it in the original zoning? What's the primary driver of this problem?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, I think I wasn't here back in 2018 or 19. I think when golf courses were specifically added as a use for the zoning code. My understanding, generically speaking, and somebody please fact check me on this, is that when golf courses were added, there was not a specific intention to say no to other athletic fields or things like that. And I will say that I have plenty of clients who, when they make changes to their zoning code, do it very purposefully and narrowly. The idea being that when there's a need identified, they would adopt a zoning amendment to address that need. And they might not expand it beyond that specific need, because that gives the town board some potential later control over future needs that might get identified. And that's why, I mentioned earlier, we start with a broad definition and narrow it down based on the community concerns identified with whatever that proposal might be. And so back in 2018, when golf courses might have been added and recreational facilities weren't, they might have, I don't know, maybe there was a particular golf course that people were thinking about, or they might have said golf courses, we're okay with that. Let's think about other stuff in the future.
Pete,
Yeah, John.
And then Mo.
I'm just going to say, as a longtime member of the planning board, our legal advisor is right on.
Mhm. Yeah, oh yeah, Mo, go ahead.
Yeah, I was around when we did the rezoning, there was like 300 pages of zoning we had to go through. So if we missed something, we did. But I did notice that on one of our sections, 212-112, where the golf courses are mentioned, it does have on section F, public and private community parks and regional parks and preserves. Now, wouldn't that cover it?
So I've had and I apologize for jumping in, but
That's all right. That's what I wanted. I wanted an answer.
Yep. So I've looked at that definition, and I would recommend against an interpretation that parks include something like these recreational facilities. Parks
Okay.
are a specific thing under state law. And actually, once the public makes a park, good luck making it not a park. When private people want to make a park, the community has a sense of it. It's not necessarily a for-profit type of enterprise. And when somebody's wanting specific like athletic fields for soccer, softball, whatever else people are doing on athletic fields, it's not really a park. It's not open to the community. And that's why when I talked with Caitlin, I said, the fix here seems to be, or the fix seems to be adding a new listed use, defining it, and really having this conversation that we're having right now.
Would that be in this particular section, 212-112? We would add it to that particular section? That's uses permitted by special permit.
I mean, even on top of
Yep.
that,
So there would be a couple of places that we end up incorporating the concept of recreation outdoors. So the first would be in the just simple definition section. We include this as a definition. And then in the section that you cited, if it's, I'm trusting that you're accurate on it. I haven't pulled it up immediately. But yes, that would be, we would list it then as a specially permitted use, which means it triggers the site plan and special use requirements, including lot size, size of buildings, number of buildings, those types of considerations, all of the environmental considerations that go along with everything involved in site plan and special permit.
Okay, that answers that question then.
and I had a question as well for Nathan. In section 212-19, uses allowed by site plan approval. Section G, facilities for agricultural education and recreation events. Is that, I mean, to me, the way that reads is specifically agricultural recreation events. When I hear that, I picture something like a 4-H camp.
Trumansburg Fair.
The Trumansburg Fair, yeah, as opposed to something like, a racket club or a tennis club or something. But what, I guess, am I reading that correctly, that is specifically for agricultural recreation events? Or
Can you repeat the section again, just so I can make sure I'm pulling it up?
so it's uses allowed by site plan approval, and it's section 212-27, letter G.
Could you repeat that section again, please?
Facilities, it's 212-27, use allowed by site plan approval. And it's letter G, as in Gary or Grace.
Hey, when you all are
Facilities
speaking,
for
can you speak
agriculture,
up?
I see.
Because it is very hard to hear you guys.
Trying my best, Michael.
Is that working on Mike?
Is it working?
No, I mean,
I
we
think-
should be,
Okay. You should be able to hear me on my laptop here, though.
On that section where it says G, it
Yeah.
says recreational events.
Okay, as opposed to facilities. Facilities, facilities for education and recreation events.
Events, so it would have to be, that's for an event, if not really for a, like a baseball, that's
Right.
not an event, that's
Right.
going on all the time.
And
Done.
I apologize, John Elder, you were raising your hand.
Yeah, sorry, John.
You're also muted, John.
I'm unmuting him. I'm asking to unmute. Can you mute? Yep, there we go. Go ahead, John.
Just a second.
Oh, you're muted. John, we can't hear you. We can't hear you, John.
Unmute.
I'm asking to unmute. All right,
Now?
Now we can. hear
Yes,
you. You're good.
Okay. If we can agree that we, on the terminology for the activity, I think that's the approach we should be taking. What kind of athletic fields, recreational fields would we think might not be unreasonable, and not worry about what it says already in the book. I think we can all agree it does not specifically allow for what we think we're talking about. And that's why the supervisor asked us to look at this. So that would be my approach, would be to more concentrate on what the definition has to cover to allow for what might be reasonable. That's it.
Just jumping in on that, I'm a little, are we done with privilege of the
Oh,
floor?
yeah,
So,
we've been done.
okay.
Yes.
So then, just jumping ahead, why don't we just put in recreational fields, which is usually soccer, football, baseball, softball. Start with that. Although, John, I'm sensitive, John the Elder, sensitive that you would like to have a bulldozer building a go-kart range and shooting gallery in your backyard. Maybe we don't want to go that far this time around.
Well, that brings up a good point. I mean, when we look at if you look at the purpose, it's sort of to preserve land for agriculture, but also to preserve rural character. However, then there are many things that are permitted by site plan approval, like including up to and including airports. So I guess some of the concerns that I would have with the current definition is the vagary, just how vague it is. Like things that I would be concerned about would be stuff that Linda mentioned, like light, like noise,
Wouldn't that all be covered under zoning? I mean,
under special permit,
yeah.
like site plan approval.
I
Yeah,
mean, we've got, looking at, parking, lighting, safety, pesticides. I mean, there are whole thousands of issues that come up when you talk about recreational
right.
fields. But I don't know that we've got the bandwidth to pick any of that up now.
Go ahead, John.
I would suggest there are not 1,000 issues. There may be some issues, but if it falls under 212.27, uses allowed by site plan approval, or 212.28, then the planning board has an opportunity to put special conditions on whatever site plan is brought before them.
I mean,
That's the way it works.
I mean, I guess what I would want to ask is, if something is included in the zone, if it's a legally permitted activity, there's only a certain degree that we could put constraints on it. Maybe Nate would want to comment on that. If it's permitted in the zone, we can't.
Okay, all right. We have one example. A number of years ago, the planning board approved a mini golf course, a miniature golf course. Everybody's aware of that, are they?
I am, yeah.
And so the miniature golf course, when there was discussion about that, the planning board did put some restrictions on. There had been some thought that along with the mini golf course, there would be a mini racetrack. And the planning board put some prohibition on that. That was because it was being brought to us, I believe, as a development area, special development area.
John, I mean, are we talking about the generics here? Or are we talking about a specific proposal? I
I'm
thought
talking about what has happened in the past.
No, I understand, but that was a specific, I guess, going back to the very first question, Nate raised that we've got to fix our zoning. We start off with a very broad, then we get to a more refined definition, and I'm proposing recreational fields, and full stop. when somebody comes, John Wordus the Younger, with a brilliant proposal to build whatever, then we evaluate that. We look at the housing, I'm sorry, the lighting, the parking, the whatever else.
So I, and stop me if I'm wrong here. I think, sir, what you're saying is effectively narrowing it right down to specifically physical sport. I'm using the word physical. This needs refinement, but sports as we all traditionally understand them, right?
Yeah.
Soccer, lacrosse, rugby, football, softball, baseball, the
Right.
traditional team type activities, which are undertaken in person without motorized equipment or
Right.
other accoutrement, and leave it at that. And then we list it as a special permit or a site plan review, which lets the planning board take into consideration everything when deciding whether or not this specifically should be allowed.
Right.
And that mirrors, I would say, and actually is even more narrow than what a golf course might allow. You know, when I think of a golf course, there's a lot of golf carts flying around on there. I mean, I've been in some pretty big golf tournaments, you know, there's a lot of people and a lot of golf carts. And so that idea, though, that it's very specifically narrowly tailored to those types of activities. And then in the future, if somebody comes in with a grand idea of saying, I would really like to put a go-kart track next to whatever we have, they can ask the town board at that time to amend the zoning code and include that.
Nate, I feel like if you said recreational fields, you would have to define what that is. I mean, because, you know, I think some people would consider go-karts to be.
Yeah, and I think the way we would do it is a definition of outdoor activities, not including
Motorized.
motorized,
Motorized.
and not motorized. There's some wordsmithing that needs to be done here that, you know, if we watch the sausage get made, you're all going to say like, oh, wow, this is ugly. But that's just sometimes what it takes. And so I hear the feedback, and I think this is exactly what the town board was looking for when Caitlin asked the planning board to consider this.
So the town board will look at the minutes of this meeting, or you will communicate what you heard as an advisor to the town board. Is that the way it will go?
And I
Hey,
know the
Mr.
person watches the recording.
Mr. Van Way,
We're not.
Mr.
open
Van
to
Way,
privilege
this is
of the
Michael
floor.
Boggs here.
We're not open to privilege of the floor yet.
I want to point
That's-
out, this is not a request from the town board. We did not discuss this or vote
is
on it.
not- No, this is from the town supervisor. Exactly, but
Yeah, it's
this
from the
is-
town, it's from a person, not the town
the-
board.
the board, the planning board is still having their discussion. It is not privilege of the floor yet.
Nathan, I have a question for you. Would we be putting this in the section design standards? Because I noticed that we do have design standards for many different items. So we would write down in design standards, it would be team sports, baseball, whatever, and we can write down whatever we want from there in different sections. So no motorized vehicles, maybe no outdoor lighting or because of evening games, stuff like that.
No, I mean, that's a great question. And you know, Mr. Boggs, you're absolutely correct. It was not the town board. It was Caitlin who had asked for this. But this is the type of feedback, right? Because I'm not going to pretend to be omniscient, and having only recently been retained to advise the town, you know, I am not 100% familiar with your town code. And so identifying those things, because we all need to be aware of the potential knock-on effects that simply adding a provision to a particular area of the code might have on the other sections. And so if the planning board is recommending that the design standards also be considered and reviewed and potentially updated, if we add a definition and a specially permitted use for recreation outdoor to the town code, that's the exact type of feedback that, you know, I am looking for to, as the person who is ultimately trying to put something together that really matches what the community wants.
But I think that the design standards would probably be a good place to start, and then whatever areas we put it in from then on.
Mo, could you elaborate? Could you, what do you mean?
Well, it's Article 20, it's design standards. Design standards are standards for everything in the town, from lighting to parking to you name it. Flag lots, they have manufactured homes. If you put it in there, you can write down exactly what you want in, if it's team sports, no motorized vehicles, that type of item. And that way we would be able to put what we want into it. And then from there, it would go to like a special permit area, but they would have to always follow the design standards.
Mhm.
And I apologize, John, the elder.
Yeah, there's a couple of things to separate out here. It seems that different members of the planning board have offered their own personal opinions. I certainly have in writing, and so did Rebecca, recognizing positive, negative kinds of things. And so I agree with Mo about the proof is in the pudding, and eventually somebody has to write maybe some design standards. I'm not sure that was a question we've been asked to deal with tonight. I think it is not. I think that whoever asked us, I guess it was the town supervisor now, wants to know, what do we think about some new language that will allow the kinds of things that we've been discussing. And I'm not sure how we're going to make that decision other than just say we've all expressed ourselves, and our recommendation are really individual recommendations that will come and show up in our minutes, or are you, Peter, you're going to try to lead us to some sort of conclusion that we all agree on?
I don't believe that's in the scope of our meeting tonight, John. The request, I don't believe that a conclusion or a formal recommendation, that was not the request, and that's not the scope of this meeting.
So I'm very happy not voting on anything.
There's no vote tonight. We've not been asked for anything formal, more to provide our opinions, which
Our individual opinions, which is what you've been getting. Is that correct?
not necessarily.
If you guys came to a consensus, we'd want to hear it.
Well, I think that's what you've been getting.
Rich is saying if we came to a consensus, they'd want to hear it. And actually, I would go along with that and say I do feel like Rebecca's not here, but I do feel like Rebecca voiced that she would want to have a definition that was more detailed, that had some constraints.
And that was my recommendation too.
Yeah, and I think that we have reached that consensus that, whatever recreational field or whatever recreational definition would be under site plan approval. I mean, should we take a vote on that as far as making a recommendation?
I hate writing resolutions by committee.
Why don't we just voice that minus Rebecca, it appears that we've reached a consensus that site plan approval is the appropriate level of inclusion for something like this.
Well, let me see if I can summarize and then I'll let, one, we're all in favor of changing it to allow some definition of recreational activities. I was proposing recreational fields.
Mhm.
Two, when we get to a specific proposal, which is not this meeting, we could do with things. Three, I think Mo was saying in the design special permit, we could get to all, we haven't talked about alcohol use, policing, parking, lighting, maintenance, grounds, there are 1,000, I'd say 1,000. In deference to John Werdis, there are 5 things I can think of. And somebody can, when we get a specific proposal from, say, John Werdis the Younger, then we can deal with these things.
I like your idea, Rodney, of being specific towards recreational fields.
yeah.
John Werdis or Mo, how do you feel about that?
I didn't follow that.
I think we
I
really
agree
have
with
to,
what Rodney just said. Actually, I heard Rodney quite clearly, and I would agree with that. So I'm not sure just where we are, like in this, the decision-making process is not clear to me.
Yeah, I get that. Go ahead.
Peter,
Yeah,
Oh,
Peter,
yes.
I think we really have to do something. We have nothing in our code right now.
Right.
So if somebody comes up to us, what are we supposed to do? Say, I'm sorry? So we have to put something in there. And my suggestion is, yes, we should proceed with this and tell Caitlin that we can, that we should continue this.
Continue what?
Oh,
This-
continue this discussion and start to put something together.
Something more specific. That's what I'm
Right,
hearing from the
exactly.
board. Maybe even as specific as recreational fields, or maybe not that specific.
No, we can, when we did the zoning before, and John would remember, we wrote a lot of the items. The town planner and the lawyer did go through them and would change the wording, and we would come up with some ideas, and then they would write it out. And then we would discuss it and say yes, no, and then rewrite it until it was correct, and then it would go and be submitted.
Right, okay.
So that's one possible way to go. I'm a pretty busy person these days, and I'm not sure I want to spend a lot of time trying to come to an agreement on particular wording. I think that the town spent thousands of dollars on a consultant in the development of the most recent zoning. So I would suggest we spend a couple of $100 more and have one up out of a planner or a legal advisor, at least throw back at us some attempts at a definition that we can look at again and discuss that, rather than all of us trying to come up with our own definition.
I think that's wise,
Yep.
John. Yeah, Mo.
John, I wasn't suggesting we write it. I was suggesting that we review it.
Oh, I
We
thought.
let somebody else write it, we review it,
Of
and
course,
that's what we did with the last time, if you remember. We reviewed all that was given to us, and then we might change it if we didn't like some of the wording.
thumbs
But
up.
we didn't write it. We didn't spend our time writing it.
I'll take your word for it, and that's the way I would go too.
So
Yes, we're not qualified to write.
something specific to move forward with.
Well,
potentially-
some of us think we are, but
Something specific to move forward with, potentially very specific and underneath some site plan approval as opposed to generally permitted uses.
Right.
Yeah. Sounds good.
so, Mr. Chairman, do you think have we accomplished what we were asked to do?
Rich, what are your thoughts on that? Because
I think we did.
the people,
I just
that-
think Caitlin was reaching out because we have this gap in the zoning.
Mhm.
I wanted your planning board input better as a whole than as individuals. Because we're asking the planning. board,
Yeah.
we're not asking you.
yeah,
So if you can come up with something that you all agree on.
well, I
that
think,
would
I
be
think
more
we just
powerful.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To present.
Yeah.
uh,
That's mine.
Present.
Yeah, and,
But you want to have, probably make it right.
Well-
So it's legally
Um,
acceptable.
and Rich, I think, like, the recording and the notes, we just presented our consensus viewpoint.
Right.
And I don't think,
Well, Rebecca's not
draft-
here.
that's
We still
true.
have
Yeah,
environmental.
that's true too.
So
Yeah.
I think you need another meeting. I don't think,
I-
take your time
Thank you.
and have the whole board engaged.
Yeah.
And make sure.
Are we a privilege of the floor, Pete?
Not yet, Michael, not yet. All right.
Yeah, then why are you letting Rich speak and you're cutting me off?
Because he is the liaison, and I asked.
No,
him-
but it's privilege of the floor.
It is not privilege of the floor. He is the liaison.
Okay, well, good, because I'm a liaison as well.
Excuse me.
I
Executive liaison. should-
I see. Well, I was not aware of that, Michael.
It's called pulling rank.
Yeah, so, I mean, we're not gonna write a resolution. A fairly clear consensus.
Do you
Yeah.
want to go back to privilege? of the
Yes,
floor now that we're-
Let's do it. All right. Oh, and, could I get a motion to end the board discussion on this matter?
Oh. I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're opening up the second privilege of the floor. Go ahead.
Somebody,
I
Michael,
guess,
wanna-
I guess
I'd
nobody
like to
wants to
see you
say
guys
anything.
start the meeting on time. And I'd like to see you be able to use the AV system if we're going to be doing Zoom.
So, Michael, thank you for your comments.
What is we are using.
Yes,
it
we
now.
are using the AV system and we did start the meeting on time, but thank you for your comments.
I haven't heard any comments.
John Wardis.
All right, John Wardis, here we go. You should be off mute. Go ahead.
Yep. Just wanted to say that was an interesting discussion. Thanks so much for taking the time to bat that idea around. And I just wanted to offer, I know, again, we have specific projects in mind, but we actually don't have necessarily a specific campus. We have our eyes on one. If that doesn't work out, we'll be looking elsewhere, probably in the agricultural district, to try to get some playing fields for our community. That said, Trumansburg Community Recreation would be happy to enter into continue the conversation, just not necessarily for a specific project, but we'd be happy to give our input if you guys are struggling, or whoever it is that decides to do the writing, if people decide to do the writing, rewriting or whatever, we'd be happy to add more input. My father actually has my contact information, if that's helpful at all. Anyway, thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you, John.
So, I guess I'd add one other thing. What I did like about Caitlin's idea, or at least her terminology, I think the term outdoor, maybe, I know you're not into specifics here, but the term outdoor may play in, you've talked about non-motorized and so on and so forth. So that may be, another aspect of it, because there's a very big difference between indoor playing fields and outdoor playing fields, obviously, in terms of the size of the infrastructure. Playing fields, though, may be a little limiting, because you can picture playing fields, soccer, baseball, football, that sort of thing. But just maybe as if you do more, continue this conversation, where does a tennis court come into play, for example? And would you want a tennis court to be part of the changes to the actual agricultural zoning or not? So tennis court or hard court surface, I think. I think maybe Linda brought up parking lots, right? Parking lots need to be addressed, and they can be gravel, grass, or paved. So there are a lot of there are a whole lot of levels, I think, that when you think about recreation fields, even. So yeah, so there is going to be some wordplay, if indeed you all decide to or the planning, whoever's making these decisions decides to move forward with this. It's complicated, like everything out there. I think that's all I have. But thanks again for discussing it today.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, right.
I just want to say, first, I want to make sure we're not creating something that there isn't a real need for. Like talking about tennis courts. I've played tennis in Trumansburg for 40 years. I've never not been able to play at the high school, except when they're having a match. So I don't think that, I personally wouldn't think there's a need for tennis courts right now, especially that pickleball is taking over. So I want to be, us to be careful in not creating something beyond what's needed.
Are we done
Yeah.
with privilege of the floor?
Yeah. I get a motion to close privilege of the floor.
I'll make it.
Linda has her.
Linda, well, go ahead, Linda.
I was just going to say, I thought the special permit category sounds like it makes a lot of sense for what you're talking about here. So that was all. Good discussion. Thank you.
All right. Can I get a motion to propose privilege to the floor?
Mo,
Mo, there you are. Can I get a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, excellent. And can I get a motion to adjourn? Mo?
Second.
Aye. All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you, everybody, for your comments. Thank you for your time. All right, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Looking forward to meeting in person without masks. Wow.
Yeah.
Mhm, for sure.
Good.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you, Nathan. All right,
I think it's important that the minutes fit for the town board.
I agree. Yeah.
When everybody
Yeah.
is
hold
gone,
on.
don't you?
All right.
Oh, you have to do the lead meeting?
All right, well, here, I'm gonna, I don't want. All right.
You, do you need me for anything?
Hold on.
Oh,
So,
yes.
can I ask? Question, just a.
If you ask me a question, you're muted.
Sounds,
In an after meeting.
sounds good,
situation.
okay. All right, so the meeting is closed, and I just wanted to, if people have a minute, just to pick your brain. Can you hear me, Nathan?
Yep, I can. And Mr. Boggs is on the town board, correct?
That's
Yeah.
right, yes, yep.
Nate, do you
So-
have what you need to write, 3 sentences of golden prose that we can hash over for weeks?
Well, the thing is, at the end of the day, for a zoning amendment change, it's the town board's decision and discretion. And when I reviewed the town of Ulysses zoning code, there's no specific requirement that the town board amendments to the zoning code actually be referred to the planning board or the zoning board. And so the town board can do whatever it wants at the end of the day. I think that the way that this came about was Caitlin wants input